The prison system is not crumbling, it is in ruins. The figures are unambiguous. Since September 2024, almost 40,000 prisoners in England and Wales have been released early to relieve pressure on an estate that has been running out of beds, out of staff, purpose and hope. By the end of June 2025, the total freed under the emergency scheme reached 38,042, with the male estate down to only around 100 usable spaces at points last year. That is not policy by design, it is policy by panic, and it's still not working. The consequences have been predictable. Recalls have surged because the system has created churn that neither prisons nor probation can safely supervise. In the quarter of April to June 2025, there were 11,041 licence recalls, up 13% on the same period in 2024 and 62% higher than 2 years earlier. Volume out, volume back, no one truly rehabilitated. The human cost is starker still. In the 12 months to September 2025, there were 411 deaths in prison custody, a 30% rise on the previous year, and the highest level in the current data series, while assaults on staff have reached records highs. The moral hazard of running institutions at or beyond safe capacity is no longer a theory, it is a body count. When a system runs this hot, errors multiply. Consider the mistaken release of Hadush Kabatu from HMP Chelmsford. A convicted offender who should have been transferred to immigration detention was instead put on the street, prompting a 48-hour manhunt before he was rearrested and deported. The details are messy, the cost of that manhunt enormous, but the underlying diagnosis simple: inexperienced staff, high turnover, relentless process, and brittle procedure. This was not a one-off freak occurrence. Mistaken releases have risen sharply alongside workload and chaos. How did we get here? Partly because we didn't listen to Rory Stewart. Years ago, as prisons minister, he warned that packing jails with short sentence revolving door offenders is the worst combination: long enough to lose jobs and housing, not long enough to change lives, and that the obvious way to lower violence is to lower the numbers. We ignored that counsel, that wise counsel, lengthened many sentences, allowed court delays to swell remand, starved probation of time and supervision capacity, then wondered why prisons turned into high-risk warehouses. Ministers now claim to be stabilising the estate by opening places and never again running out of space. They have promised 14,000 new places by 2031 and laid a sentencing bill with a Texas-inspired earned progression model. Good behaviour advances release, bad behaviour delays it, plus far tougher community penalties, wider use of tags and curfews, and a presumption against short custodial terms. Some of this is overdue, none of it works, and without capacity and culture to match. What should we do? Concretely, immediately, and then structurally? Well, first, we should take the heat out of the pipeline, cut the unnecessary flow in, speed the safe flow out. That means a statutory presumption against custodial sentences under 12 months for non-violent, non-sexual offences, backed by binding guidance to sentences and resourced punitive community orders, intensive unpaid work with visible restitution, sobriety tags where relevant, compulsory treatment, tight curfews, and swift sanctions for breach. Scotland has shown that direction. England and Wales must stop talking and legislate properly, not as a fair weather measure, but as a permanent default. Pair this with a fast track for low-risk remand cases to prevent needless bed blocking. Second, we need to fix recalls. The recall system is now a revolving door. Replace blanket recalls for technical breach with a triage model. Recall for risk, not for paperwork. Create graduated sanctions in the community. Expand electronic monitoring where it genuinely reduces risk, and cap recall periods for purely technical infringements. Save full recall for new serious offending or clear escalation. Third, restore basic decency and order inside. You cannot rehabilitate in chaos. Stabilise regimes at a minimum of 10 hours out of cell with guaranteed work, education and family contact. Protect officers with staffing levels that permit dynamic security rather than constant crisis response. Violence falls when staff know prisoners by name and routine, not when they sprint between wings. Fourth, fund probation as if it matters, because it does. The sentencing bill's credibility depends on supervision that is real. The state must buy what it is trying to sell: small caseloads, trained officers and consistent local partnerships for housing, drug treatment and mental health. Without roofs, recovery and relationship, you get recalls. Fifth, we need to drain the backlog. Justice delayed is disorder created. Expand court sitting days, use video sensibly for case management, and pay for proper solicitors and barristers and experts who unlock progress. Every month a case lingers, every prison bed fills with remand, and another family is held in limbo. Sixth, be honest about capacity. New prisons help only if they are properly staffed, decently designed and purpose-built for modern regimes. Ghost wings do not keep the public safe. Do not pretend that pouring concrete is a substitute for lowering unnecessary demand. Seventh, measure what we claim to value. Publish quarterly dashboards that track not only headcount and places, but purposeful activity hours, education, attainment, drug test results, family contact, staff retention, assault, self-harm and deaths. If the numbers move the wrong way, say so, and say what changes this quarter are there to correct them. The public can accept tough news. It will not accept euphemism. A prison is there in part to reform. Finally, reconnect punishment with purpose. The public is entitled to protection and proportionate sanction. Victims are entitled to respect and reparation. Offenders are obliged to make amends and change. That triptych fails when prisons default to warehousing. It begins to succeed when sentences fit risk and harm, when supervision is relentless and rehabilitation is part of that process, and when we reserve scarce cells for those who are dangerous, not merely difficult. So to return to those headline numbers, nearly 40,000 early releases in 10 months, a record death toll, a recall machine running hot, a notorious release error that became a national story. These are not isolated dots. They form a single picture, a system that has been asked to do too much with too little for too long, and then blamed when the maths stops adding up. Rory Stewart's unfashionable insight was not soft-hearted, it was hard-headed. Reduce the numbers that do not need to be there so that you can do the hard work with those who do. If we want fewer victims, safer streets, fewer funerals in custody, we must stop treating prisons as a catch-all solution and start treating them as a scarce, serious tool used sparingly, managed professionally, and focused on change, not churn. That is how you rebuild something that is not simply